Are you thinking about becoming an instructional designer? You're not alone. Instructional design is one of the fastest growing fields, but it's also a bit confusing. Many of the best instructional designers you know of fell into the role by accident and didn't have the dreams or ambitions of designing learning experiences for a living. Other instructional designers, they pursued years of education to make this job a reality. The differences in how to become an instructional designer have created a need for an instructional design career guide. That is why I wrote the book to help you with this, which is called What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the book is out. It's currently available as an ebook and now on Kindle for Amazon. I'm still in the process of making the physical book happen, but I promise this is going to come out soon. So what is this book all about? The book is a collection of thoughts of everything I wish I had known before starting as an instructional designer. Over the years from talking with folks like yourself, I've been collecting some of the most commonly known questions, and to best serve you, I answer them to the best of my ability in each chapter. Some of these questions are, what does an instructional designer do? What are the pros and cons of instructional design? What kind of instructional designer do I want to be when I grow up? How do I build a portfolio? How do I make connections in the field? How do I teach myself a new skill? How do I work with SMEs? Is an instructional design degree right for me? What are my students actually doing in a course? How do I know if my courses are designed well? And many more. This book is your guide to help you become successful. It doesn't matter where you are in your career, newbies and veterans have both bought the book and have been enjoying it. You can find the book at theinstructionaldesignbook.com or use the links in the show notes for the Kindle version. Now, let's start the show. Hey folks, and welcome on into your podcast. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm a senior instructional designer and program manager at MIT. I have a blog, podcast, YouTube channel, and courses to support your instructional design education. And my purpose is to help you make the online learning experience meaningful for you and for your students. You can find all my content over at drlukehobson.com. And as you heard from the introduction, the book I've been working on for months now is finally live. All of my guidance about the field for your career is inside of this thing, so be sure to pick up your copy today over at theinstructionaldesignbook.com. I want to give a huge thank you to all of you who already bought the book. It's been incredible to see people uploading photos of the cover art or posting about their favorite chapters. This is all very new to me as I never envisioned writing a book. I didn't have plans for any of this, but it's eventually what came to be. I think you know by now that I love producing content, but that usually is for a podcast or a blog or YouTube or something else. I never really thought about putting a book and making this all happen, but after enough conversations and after honestly coming to the realization of how great it would be if you could just download something with all of the knowledge inside of my head and take that with you, it kind of makes sense to actually make a book. One thing I wasn't expecting when the book came out was how many of you would reach out to me about your dreams of writing a book. This seems to be a bucket list item for many of you, so I figured I would peel back the curtain. I'll share with you my 5 essential tips with how I wrote the book in 6 months without losing my sanity. I'm specifically highlighting that time frame, by the way, because 6 months, that was my personal deadline. You can take as much time as you need to, but I found that a hard and short deadline, that is a true motivator for me, and it works really well. I actually used that same tactic when writing my dissertation, and it worked then, so I figured it's probably going to work again, and it actually did. I told myself I had to be done for my dissertation by the time I turned 30, and I happened to graduate on my 30th birthday, which was really cool just to see that all come together and still be able to technically hit my deadline, which is just kind of neat. So please feel free. Use your own discretion with setting a deadline. Know yourself, know your limits, know what's currently going on in your surroundings, but try to set a realistic, obtainable, yet at the same time, just give you enough pressure to want to be able to hit this deadline. With that being said, let's get into my 5 essential tips on how to write and complete your book. Tip number 1 is removing barriers. What's currently holding you back from writing a book? Is it an issue with time or writer's block or something else? For me, I didn't have a desire to write a book because of 2 barriers. The first was being afraid of working with a publisher, and the second was the unknown of making physical copies of books. The first thing I did when I started to have an idea of writing the book was that I would turn to my friends and colleagues who are successful authors, and I asked them about their experiences with the logistics of writing a book. They shared with me their stories of what they encountered and gave me a few pieces of wisdom. After hearing about their troubles with publishers, I decided for my first book I wasn't going to go the full published author route. I did this based on some key factors, and if I had to boil it down to one word, it would be control. I wanted control of the content, the timing, the marketing, and the formatting. My purpose of writing this book wasn't to become a bestseller, it was to help new instructional designers with their problems today. For the sake of it, I did talk to 2 publishers, and my concerns matched up with what my colleagues told me to look out for. So instead, I decided I would become a self-published author, at least for now. My second barrier was worrying about the mechanics of physical copies of books. Growing up, my mom worked with an author to help him sell and distribute his books throughout the New Hampshire area. I was young, so I really don't remember all of the details, but I do have a memory of going into a warehouse and seeing that this author had hundreds of copies of books laying around everywhere. I really don't want my basement to be full of books. So instead, I decided right at the very beginning of this idea, I'm just going to make this an ebook. If readers want hard copies of the book, I'll go through print on demand with Amazon and I'll figure it out. Now, this turns out to be true as I'm currently researching today about how to do this, but I'm so thankful that I get to learn about this task now when the book is done and not at the beginning just to give me another worry or another headache. So, my takeaway for this area is for you to do some reflection. Think about what's stopping you from writing the book. Write down those barriers. Whatever they are, find alternatives around them and find out how to maneuver around these obstacles. My second tip is creating confidence. I thoroughly believe in the power of confidence. Motivation and momentum drive us to achieve our goals, and through this process, it creates discipline and confidence. If you don't have the belief in yourself or your book, then that's a deal breaker in my opinion. You need to gain some small wins in order to make the book writing process a reality. So my first question for you is, do you currently write? This could be journal entries, blog posts, online reviews, or anything else. Just simply, do you practice writing? You need to practice this skill and then seeing if people are going to read your work and then enjoy it. There is almost like an art to being able to have people read it and then for you to be willing and able to accept criticism and feedback. For me, I've written a dissertation. Nothing is going to be harder than that behemoth, so writing a book really didn't intimidate me. And yes, this surely added to my self-confidence. What really created confidence for me, though, were actually my blog posts. My blog has been shared and read by thousands of instructional designers. So I'm assuming that if I'm going to be talking about a topic that is relevant to the blog and relevant for instructional designers, that the book was going to be well received. And this is why I'm not really afraid to promote the book or talk about it or market it, because I know based on my prior work, based on what people have told me, based on people resharing some of the blog posts, that it's going to connect with the readers. So my takeaway here is that if you have not practiced this writing skill before, if you really haven't written seriously before, I would highly encourage you to write a blog post or two and share it on LinkedIn. Try to make this topic relevant to the purpose of your book's theme. Collect feedback and guidance from those who read it, and then go back and make the necessary adjustments. It very much is a mental skill, I will say, to be able to collect this feedback, read it, and to not be taken aback by it, to actually say, oh, all right, I can see their points. It does make sense to change this. And this is something that I went through with the dissertation process, as I had several people reviewing everything and crossing lines out, saying things didn't make sense and having to go back to the drawing board. It built up this type of a mental skill to be willing to accept criticism for going forwards. So practice getting used to this. Now, if your book is something that's more along the lines of like an entertainment reason, that's why you're writing the book itself, maybe on LinkedIn isn't the best place to share it. You can certainly go and share it on relevant groups on Facebook, or, hey, even post it on Reddit. You can definitely find an audience to be able to read something and to give you feedback. Of course, please just make sure that the people who you are getting feedback from are the people who are going to be your target audience, and they are people who you actually do respect and you do cherish their feedback. Number 3 is dividing and conquering. I'm assuming that one of the barriers stopping you from writing a book is that you are thinking about the big picture. You imagine every single chapter, the cover art, the table of contents, the references, the diagrams, the number of pages, and more. While it's always a good idea to have an overview of what adventure you're getting into, I learned a long time ago about the power of taking things one step at a time. Instead of envisioning the book as a whole, I chose to view it as 18 blog post ideas, and these eventually became the 18 chapters. The book consists of commonly asked questions by new instructional designers or transitioning and aspiring instructional designers. After writing down some of those commonly asked questions, I could visualize where the book was going. I jotted down a quick outline, and I thought about some of the most popular topics that have come up actually since the pandemic. If you take topics like working with SMEs, or the day in the life of an instructional designer, or creating a portfolio, or going back to school, there are many other different topics that as I started to put them all together, it formed an outline. And after moving a few pieces around, it became even clearer how the questions would align to the book's title. All I needed was to make a few rough drafts to see if the content actually connected together. And after a few days, it started to take shape. Each rough draft became another step in the right direction, and before long, most of the chapters were done. So my takeaway for you for here is that writing an entire book is scary. Honestly, if I'm just being honest with you, that concept of writing an entire book is intimidating. Writing one chapter, though, well, that's manageable. Break down your book into an outline. It's okay if it's not going to be complete yet. Just try to get as much down as you can. More ideas are going to pop up as you begin this writing process and as you begin to make more and more rough drafts of the chapters. You can always go back and you will revise the outline later, which is fine. But once you have a general sense of each chapter, ask yourself if it aligns with the book's purpose. Will this serve your audience? Do these chapters tell a story? Once you have these answers, you're ready to write more. You can almost think about it like an instructional designer. Are the main outcomes aligning to the objectives? Do the objectives align to the activities, to the topics, and to the other content? If yes, it's time to begin and time to write more. Number 4 is hiring talent. This is a lesson I wish I learned a long time ago. Just because I can do the job doesn't necessarily mean that I should. I have a degree in graphic design, and I've spent years using Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and all the other tools you can think of. When I first envisioned the book, I figured that I would do the designs for the cover and the layout. After spending so much time writing, I quickly came to the realization that I absolutely did not want to spend more time doing the design work too. I pivoted. I hired a designer, and it was the best decision I made. She came up with a beautiful cover and a layout that honestly I would have never considered. It did feel like a calculated risk to give someone the reins to say, hey, I'm just going to let you do you, be creative. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's some of the colors, but honestly, just go for it. And whatever happens, happens. And going off of that, too, I did think about, if I truly hated the design, worst case scenario, I absolutely just said, nope, this is not for me. Well, what would I do? Well, I would just go work with another artist. I would go find another designer. It's not the end of the world. Now, fortunately, everything came out fantastic. It looks awesome. I love the cover and I love the interior layout. But I did have a plan B just in case if things didn't really go so hot. The other key person I hired was an editor, which you're like, yeah, obviously makes sense. You have a book, you need an editor. But my tip for this one, though, and as I'm reflecting and thinking back to this, is that I found the right editor for me. I have a friend named Jen where she is an editor. She has an English background, but she also has an online learning background. So that's what was so fabulous is that she was the perfect person to read the manuscript. And just like with the designer of how she was able to go and give suggestions and have the freedom to do whatever with the design, I basically said the same thing to Jen of just like, hey, you know me, you know this content, you know about instructional design. So beyond just the basic edits, if you see anything else that you have for additional ideas or for suggestions, my feelings aren't going to be hurt. So please feel free to comment and to write them all down. And undoubtedly, in my opinion, her edits made the book stronger. The messages certainly are going to resonate more with the readers because A, she actually read it, but B, she has an instructional design background, so she really understands where I was trying to go with the message. So a second set of eyes never hurts at all. So my main takeaway from here is that you need to be able to hire the right talents. The right support system can enhance your book and your writing process. For designers and editors, check out Fiverr. Now, I know just by saying the word Fiverr that some of you may have had a negative experience before in the past, and others of you have had a phenomenal experience. I so far have not had a single negative experience with Fiverr. And I would highly encourage you to reach out to my designer, Rika. She is awesome. She is the one who did everything that I was just talking about. So I'm going to include her contact information in the show notes below if you wanted to go ahead and reach out to her. And I believe right now on her portfolio, this book actually made the cut, which is kind of cool. So you can see it, and that's how you're going to know if it's the right person or not. But please, I beg of you, be sure to do your due diligence when it comes to researching artists, when it comes to researching editors. Make sure to look for ratings, past work. I mentioned a portfolio, pricing, everything else as well. Just please be careful and do your very best that you can. The other option that you could do is to reach out to your network, to your colleagues, and try to see if they have recommended people. I absolutely could have asked the authors that I talked to before about their editors or who did their design of their work or for anything else. I didn't at the time, but once again, reflecting and thinking back now, I probably should have just to see if they had anyone else that I should be talking to before starting this process. So certainly use your network. I have seen people go on LinkedIn too and just say, hey, I'm working on this brand new project. I'm looking for this editor. I'm hoping that you have a background in XYZ. Please feel free to contact me if you do. So that is definitely an option that you can pursue as well. And then finally, my last tip is sharing the experience. The best idea I had about writing the book was to share my experience. As soon as I wrote the title down on a Word doc, I began to tell everyone that I am about to go on this crazy journey, and I invited them along for the ride. I had no idea what each week was going to bring me, but I figured it would be cool for you to hear about just what I'm going through, the struggles, the wins, just the reality of, hey, I'm trying to write a book in 6 months. Let's see where this goes. I shared my updates through my mailing list, through the Instructional Design Institute community, through Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and a few other different social media groups as well. And I even told my peers, my colleagues, my coworkers, my family, just about anyone who would listen to me, I told them that I am about to write a book. Now, I did this for 3 reasons. The first, it was going to keep me accountable. Every time I had a conversation with someone, they always asked me, "Hey, Luke, how's the book coming along?" And it was just a constant reminder that I had to commit. I had to finish this because everyone knows that's what I'm currently working on. Now, I utilized this same strategy for my dissertation, and once again, it worked then, so I figured it's probably going to work again. It's an interesting feeling when you can't avoid that question when someone's asking you about the book or the process or, how far along are you or anything like that, because you want to be able to give people updates. You want to say, "Hey, yeah, actually, I just finished the second chapter," or, now it's in the hands of my editor, or, now I'm going to be exploring this new topic, or the outline's done, or, whatever it is. That was always so mentally rewarding to say, wow, I actually did make progress. And by being able to communicate that with others, this certainly did help me to progress. The second reason was that sharing built up excitement and anticipation. I wanted people to be just as excited to read this as I was excited to write it. I wanted word of mouth to spread that I was up to something and to keep it on everyone's radar. I started to receive messages from potential readers asking, "When's the book coming out? Feel like I'm waiting for forever on this." And it was just kind of funny that I could tell that some people, they weren't getting impatient. That's not the right word, but they were getting antsy for a good reason, because they wanted to read it as I kept on sharing more and more about the progress of the book. And then when it finally launched, I received so many congratulation types of messages, and I still jump up and down in excitement. And I get like giddy when somebody shares a screenshot of them holding the tablet, reading the ebook. This is because it's so cool, and I never envisioned that I would be writing a book. So it was just so neat to see, and it really just helped with everything from a motivational purpose. And then the third reason was that some of my colleagues offered to read the manuscript and to write a review for the ebook. Now, this is also something that I wish that I did more of. I did ask a few select people, but I didn't realize how many people were willing to actually do this. And their reviews are going to reinforce the notion that the ebook can truly help new and transitioning instructional designers. It's always nice to know from the people that you respect and admire that, hey, what you produced is great and it's going to help people. Unlike if they came back to me and said like, "Hey, Luke, you're not really on track here. Something's kind of off." So it's just nice to be able to reinforce that positivity. Now, as an added bonus to things is that when you get these reviews from others, this is going to become marketing material, whether that's going to be for the book's website or for social media or for emails or for anything else. The thing is that you can write the best book in the world, but if no one reads it, it doesn't matter. So my takeaway for you here is to share your journey. Tell everyone you know you are going down this path and invite them to experience it with you. If you haven't already, I would highly encourage you to start a mailing list and to host your own community to bring people together. Reach out to colleagues that you respect and admire and ask them to write a review for you to include in the book itself and for marketing material for your website. You need to build that excitement. And hearing from other experts that you are on track is not only going to boost your motivation, but it's going to grab the attention of your future readers as well. And that, my friends, is my crazy book writing process of how I finished the ebook in 6 months. I hope these tips help you with either starting your own book writing journey or help you to cross the finish line and to finally get your book out there. It is a mental challenge. You need to dedicate time to this. You need to make this serious. It is very much a humongous commitment if you want to be able to do this. And while my book has only been out since Thursday, I can tell you that it's been absolutely so cool to see. And once again, if you haven't already picked up the copy of the book, theinstructionaldesignbook.com, or go to Amazon for the Kindle version, you can find either there or using the links down below in the show notes. And thank you to all of you who have purchased the book, reached out to me, told me that you liked it, what you're enjoying. It just makes me so happy. It's just so cool to hear about. Shout out to today's sponsor, Idle Courses Academy. You've heard me talk about them before. When it comes to corporate instructional design training to help you land the job you want, I would highly advise you to look into Idle. I have been recommending Idle for a while now, and that's for a good reason, is because anytime I send someone over to Dr. Sargent and for all of the courses and offerings that Idle has to offer, I always hear tremendous feedback that comes back to me just saying, thank you. I now have a job at this corporate organization that I would have never had if I didn't take you up on your suggestion. So if you are serious about going into the corporate instructional design space, please go and check out Idle. And just recently, I actually saw a job posting that called out Idle as being a qualification. So shout out to Dr. Sargent for what she's done. It's really fascinating and just so cool to see exactly how far that organization has come. So go into the show notes to learn more about Idle and see what it can do for you today. And finally, folks, give this podcast a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and feel free to connect over with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. For anything else, check out drlukehobson.com. Thank you so much once again, everybody. Stay nerdy out there. I'll talk to you next time.